Telegram is one of the fastest growing and biggest social messaging apps, text apps in the world, popular all around the world, including in the United States, but almost nothing or very little seems to be known about the company. It's headquartered in Dubai, where we are now. It is run and owned, and the software is designed, written by Pavel Durov, who began it some years ago, who almost never does interviews. It turns out he's a very interesting person, extremely interesting person. We learned that the other day while talking to him, and he has agreed to sit down and tell us about himself and his company, and we thought it'd be definitely worth hearing. And with that, Pavel, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I confess I've used Telegram. I didn't know anything about you or the company, and I was just kind of amazed by your story. And if you wouldn't mind just recreating it a little bit for our audience, where are you from? How'd you start this and why?
That'll be a long story.
That's okay.
I was born in 1984 in the Soviet Union, so it was a fun year to be born in. And back then, I could witness, the deficiencies of the centralized system we had in the Soviet Union. When I was 4 years old, my family moved to Italy, where I could compare what I saw in Turin, Italy, with what I experienced in the Soviet Union. And I thought the capitalist system, the free market system, is definitely better, at least for me. I went to school in Italy. I became sort of a part of the European as a result. But then when the Soviet Union collapsed, we decided to move back to Russia. In Italy, though, me and my brother, we had a lot of fun time. He was shown live on Italian TV as a young prodigy kid who could solve cubic equations in real time, being just 10 years old, and that was considered to be impossible back then in Italy.
I don't know what a cubic equation is, so yeah, it sounds difficult to me.
Definitely. And when I first went to school in Italy, I didn't know how to speak Italian. I didn't know a single Italian word, and a lot of teachers said, like, this kid will not going to be successful in our school. By the end of the first year, I was second best. By the end of this next year, I was the best student in our class. So it also showed me that, well, you could excel, you could compete. I like that competitive environment. And then when we got back to Russia, it was a little bit chaotic. The only reason we got back is my father got an offer to run one of the departments in the St. Petersburg State University. He's one of the famous scholars and writers dealing with ancient Roman literature. And that experience was very different, and I still enjoyed it, because in Russia in the 90s you had these experimental schools where you were taught everything. Like, we had 6 foreign languages, we had math, like very specialized.
6 foreign languages at once?
6 foreign languages in parallel. You would have math similar that you would have in specialized math schools, and like chemistry at the same level you would have at schools specialized in chemistry and biology. So that was really intense. My brother, he became the world champion in maths, in the international Olympiads in maths and programming many times in a row, absolute best. Myself, I was just the best student at my school. Also did some victories in local competitions in several areas, but we both were very passionate about coding and designing stuff. And because we brought this IBM PC XT computer from Italy back in the early 90s, we were one of the few families in Russia who could actually teach ourselves how to program. And we started to do that. I was in the university, I was building websites for my fellow students. And as a result, I started a company that became what they call the Facebook of Russia. We don't like to name it that way because we actually managed to do a lot of things before Facebook, and that defined how the social media industry developed in the years to come. The company's name was VK. I started it when I was 21 years old. I just graduated university. And it eventually became the largest social network, the most popular social network in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and a bunch of other post-Soviet countries. That was a significant effort on my side because I, at a certain point, was the sole employee of the company. I would write the code myself. I would do the design myself. I would manage the servers myself. It was quite intense. I even responded to customer support requests. Barely slept, but that was a fun time when I was 21, 22 years old. And then the company grew, like I said, to somewhere about 100 million active users, which was a lot back then. It was, I think, 2012 or 2011 when we faced our first issues in Russia. Because you see, I was still a big believer in these values of free market, freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. So when the Russian opposition started to use VK to organize large protests in Russia, where like almost 500,000 people would go and protest on the main square or some of the main squares of the city, we were requested to ban these communities on VK by the government. And I refused.
So the government asked you to shut down communications between their opponents.
Well, VK is a social networking platform,
right.
So they have this large public communities that anybody can join, anybody can read what people are discussing or what the administrators are posting. They can comment, they can share. So it was a tool for these protesters to organize themselves. Back then, it wasn't about us, siding with one side, with one part of the political fight or the other. It was us defending the freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly, which we believed was the right thing. But that didn't go too well with the government, and they were not too happy about that, I would say. And in a few years from then, in 2013, we had a similar situation where you had these protests in Ukraine where people again would use VK to organize themselves and go to the main square of the city and show their disagreement with the government.
Yes.
And we received a request/demand from the Russian side saying you have to give us the private data of the organizers of this protest. And our response was, wait a minute, this is a different country. We won't betray our Ukrainian users because you ask us to do that. And we decided to refuse, and that didn't go too well with the Russian government as well. So at the end of that year, I had to make a difficult decision because I was offered basically a choice between two suboptimal options. One of which was I would start complying to whatever the leaders of the country told me to do. And the other one was I could sell my stake in the company, retire, resign as the CEO, and leave the country. I chose the latter.
If I could just ask you to pause, it's a little strange because I have heard people say that Telegram is a part of the Russian government, and you're describing the opposite. You're saying you had to leave the country because you wouldn't bow to their demands.
Well, exactly like you're saying, people who have very limited knowledge of where Telegram came from, they would make these claims. They could be encouraged by our competitors who see it as an easy way to discredit us because Telegram is spreading like forest fire. 2.5 million users sign up every day, and we're sort of a threat. So I'm not surprised there's this perception because our competitors, they spend tens of billions on marketing, and they're known for using PR firms to also engage in campaigns like that. So
how much do you spend on marketing?
$0.
$0 in dollars?
$0. We've never spent anything on acquiring users for marketing purposes. We never promoted Telegram, on other social platforms in any way. This is very different from other apps. You could see them being promoted here or there. Telegram is different. All of our growth is purely organic, and we got to almost 900 million users without having to spend anything on ads to promote Telegram.
Amazing. I'm sorry to interrupt your
narrative.
Sure. No, it's just interesting because I have heard people say that, but it sounds like the opposite of the truth. So you decided to sell the company, resign as CEO, and leave your country.
Yes, that's what I did. It was a bit painful because obviously my first company was my baby. I created myself. There was a lot of creativity, time, and effort invested in that platform. But at the same time, I understood that I would rather be free. I would want to take orders from anyone. And I left behind probably a comfortable life. But for me, it was never about becoming rich. For me, everything in my life was about becoming free.
Yes.
And to the extent it is possible, my mission in life was to allow other people to also become free, in a sense. And using the platforms that we created, or I created, my hope was that they could express their freedoms. This is the mission of Telegram, and it was also, in part, the mission of my previous company, VK.
We wanted to pause this interview just for a minute to point something out. When the Russian government asked Pavel Durov to use his social media company to censor its political opponents, he refused. He said he would rather resign and leave the country where he was born than participate in something like that. Such was his commitment to free speech. Now, you got to compare that, what he did, what Pavel Durov did, to what Mark Zuckerberg did, or Parag Agarwal, the guy who ran Twitter before Elon Musk bought it. Both of them have collaborated with governments to censor people, and that's shameful. So we believe Pavel when he says that his app, Telegram, will be a bastion of free speech, because it has been. And we believe him because he's shown how committed to that he is. So we've decided that we're going to launch with pride our own Telegram channel to give one more avenue to reach people with our content free from censorship. So if you're on Telegram, we ask that you would subscribe to our new channel by searching for our username listed below. We're honored to be doing this. We're going to get back to our conversation with Pavel Durov.
So you start Telegram after you leave Russia, correct?
Yeah, so the idea for Telegram came when we were still based in Russia, because at some point we had this very stressful situation where armed policemen would come to my house, try to break in, because I refused to take down these opposition groups that I mentioned earlier. And I realized there is no secure means of communication. I realized I want to tell my brother what's going on, to coordinate whatever we want to do. And every tool to communicate I could use was not really secure, not encrypted. It was not safe to use them. So I thought, it could be a good idea to actually come up with a decently encrypted messaging app. And my brother, being the genius that he is, he was able to create this encryption standard that we are using up until this day with minor changes. But the idea
your brother wrote the encryption?
Yes. Well, my brother had like 2 PhDs in maths, super smart. He could, he's an expert in cryptography. He designed the basic principles of the Telegram's encryption. I was more on the user interface side, the way how the app works, the features, etc. He was responsible for the encryption side.
So where did you go when you left Russia?
We tried several places. We first went to Berlin. We tried to set up a company in Berlin. We then tried London, Singapore, San Francisco, you name it. We've been everywhere. And
why didn't you stay in any of those places?
Oh, because the bureaucratic hurdles were just too difficult to overcome. I was bringing the best in class programmers in the world to these places, and I was trying to hire them from a local company. And the response I got in places like Germany, for example, is that no, you can't hire people from outside of the European Union, because you should first run some newspaper ad in the local magazine or whatever. And then if for 6 months nobody responds from engineers that are available inside the European Union and Germany, then you're allowed kind of to hire outsiders. And I thought it was a crazy idea because...
Why didn't you just say they were illiterate refugees?
Well, because we didn't consider ourselves refugees. We were, very successful people. We could have gone anywhere.
No, but if you told them you were illiterate refugees, they would let you stay. Yeah. So you go from Germany to Singapore to London to San Francisco. What happened in San Francisco?
Well, in San Francisco, we really thought that would be the place for us to be in, because all the tech companies are there or around San Francisco. And there were two things that happened that made us think twice. Well, one thing is pretty obvious. I was in San Francisco. I got attacked on the street after visiting, I think it was Jack Dorsey in Twitter, in the Twitter's office. And I was walking back at 8 p.m. To my hotel, and I got attacked in the street. This is the only country where I got attacked in the street.
What happened?
Just three big guys tried to grab my phone from my hands. I was tweeting about the fact that I just met the founder of Twitter. That seemed like a right idea for me back then to do. And I got attacked. I didn't want to let them have my phone. They probably didn't expect resistance. So I snatched my phone back. There was a short fight with the guys. There was a little bit blood involved. But I managed to run away and decided I should probably
They probably don't mug a lot of Russians. They might have been surprised.
Well, they were much taller than me, I must
bet.
admit. And there were three of them. But I think I put up a good fight.
Were you surprised that this happened in San Francisco?
Completely.
Yeah.
It was a shock to me because I traveled a lot. That was the first place I got attacked. And I thought, all right, maybe we shouldn't look at San Francisco. Maybe there are other places in America where
you don't get attacked?
Yeah, exactly. But there's this second part, which was probably more alarming there in the US. We got too much attention from the FBI, the security agencies, wherever we came to the US. So to give you an example, last time I was in the US, I brought an engineer that is working for Telegram, and there was an attempt to secretly hire my engineer behind my back by cybersecurity officers or agents, wherever they are called.
The US government should hire your engineer?
That's my understanding. That's what he told me.
To write code for them or to break into Telegram?
They were curious to learn which open source libraries are integrated to the Telegram's app, on the client side, and they were trying to persuade him to use certain open source tools that he would then integrate into the Telegram's code that, in my understanding, would serve as backdoors.
Would allow the US government to spy on people who use Telegram?
The US government, or maybe any other government, because a backdoor is a backdoor regardless of who is using it.
That's right.
And
that's a little surprising to hear. Maybe it's not surprising. It's offensive. You're confident that happened?
Yes. There is no reason for my engineer to make up the stories. Also because I personally experienced similar pressure in the US. Whenever I would go to the US, I would have two FBI agents greeting me at the airport, asking questions. One time I was having my breakfast at like 9 a.m. and the FBI showed up at my house that I was renting. And that was quite surprising. And I thought, we're getting too much attention here. It's probably not the best environment to run.
Why would had you committed a crime?
No, they were interested to learn more about Telegram. They knew I, left Russia. They knew what we were doing, but they wanted details. And my understanding is that they wanted to establish a relationship to, in a way, control Telegram better. I understand that we're doing their job. It's just that for us running a privacy-focused social media platform, that probably wasn't the best environment to be. We want to be focused on what we do, not on government relations of that sort.
The government relations. So then you came to UAE, to Dubai.
Yes. 7 years ago, we moved here. We first wanted just to try it for half a year, see if it works out. And it turned out to be a great place. We never looked back, and we never wanted to change the UAE for any other place after that.
Why?
Well, for a number of reasons. First, the ease of doing business here is so high. For example, you can hire people from anywhere in the world as long as you're paying them a good salary. The residence permits they're granted automatically. It's very different. If you try to do that in Europe and some other countries, it's very different from them. Second, it's very tax efficient. Third, the infrastructure is great. You get a lot for the minimum amount of taxes you're paying. The roads, the airports, the hotels, everything. I think you witnessed it yourself.
Yes.
But I think more importantly is that it's a neutral place. It's a neutral country. It's a small country that wants to be friends with everybody. It's not aligned geopolitically with any of the big superpowers. And I think it's the best place for a neutral platform like ours to be in if we want to make sure we can defend our users' privacy and freedom of speech.
So in the time that you've been here, there have been a number of wars and threats of war, precursors to war. Have you had any pressure from the government here, honestly, any pressure from the government here to reveal a backdoor into Telegram or to ban anyone or to make any changes to your business?
Zero. That's the best part. For all the 7 years we've been here, there's been zero pressure coming from the UAE towards Telegram. They've been very supportive, very helpful, and it's a big contrast from whatever we've experienced before.
What about what you've experienced since you moved here in those 7 years? Have you come under pressure from other governments under whose jurisdiction you don't fall, but to accommodate their demands?
Well, of course. Well, Telegram is a large platform. We are popular in many countries, and we've been receiving a lot of requests, demands. Some of them were legitimate. Like if there was a group of people who was promoting violence, there was some terrorist activity that was, spreading violence in some parts of the world, publicly posting things that any decent human being would disallow or wouldn't want to be posted. We would help them. But in some other cases where we thought it would be crossing the line, it wouldn't be in line with our values of freedom of speech and protecting people's private correspondence, we would ignore those.
Can you give us an example of a request that you thought crossed into censorship and spying, violating people's privacy?
Well, there's I would say a very funny story related to your home country. After the events of January the 6th, we received a letter from, I believe, congressmen of the Democratic side, and they requested that we would share all the data we had in relation to what they called this uprising. And we checked it with our lawyers, and they said, you better ignore it. But the letter seemed very serious, and the letter said, if you fail to comply with this request, you